So, well, thank you for coming to this meeting of the like Booty Mafia book club. This month we read Dyscalculia and My Dear Henry, to one nonfiction, Dyscalculia, and a fiction book, My Dear Henry. Ian, what did you think about My Dear Henry?
Um, all right. First thing I'd notice was that it's the first fiction book we've read for a while that I feel is targeted towards a younger demographic. Um,
Yeah.
it's the first one that's been like for I feel like this is an appropriate book for like teenagers and like even like young like adolescents, I think. Because like even though like the story it's based on is like I only know like the broad strokes, but I'm pretty sure the original story was quite violent or like scary. Although maybe it's scary by the standards of the era it was written in. But this one was decidedly non-violent. It was very much like mostly focused on the feelings of the characters, I think.
Yeah,
Um
a lot of a lot of the violence happens off page.
Yeah, nearly all of it. It's you basically I think the only thing that happens like on screen really is I think it doesn't really specify. This is the other thing. It's quite like light on details, but I think it's like it's an attempted essay by Sir Carew in the middle. Anyway, I feel like I'm jumping from place to place in the story, but it's like an attempted essay by the employer that the person he was working for
Hmm.
throughout the middle to third, like the second and third act, I'd say, was when he was working for him. So yeah, that's the only like on-screen violence. The other one they like find out through a news article, basically.
Yeah, it was a little confusing for me, because I was reading it via audio. So like I was listening to it and I kept thinking that I was like that I had missed stuff because but it just turns out that it just wasn't on page. Like when
Mm,
they would like say that certain things had happened and I was like, wait, when did that happen? And then so like and then so like I was like a little lost about like certain things, and because it was on audio, it was a little hard for me to like if I was reading it physically, I'd be able to just like flip back a couple pages like very easily and like just be like,
mm,
oh, just like skim really fast to see if certain things had if I had missed something, and then um
yeah. For me, because I only read one book a month, I can sort of like go quite slowly through it, I think. But yeah, I do end up reading less. But yeah,
it is I find it is one of I guess maybe one of the shorter books that we've reread. It's
yeah, this one,
both the books this
um,
month are kind of short.
the Audible, the Audible file was only I think like 7 hours, which is like half the length of the previous book we did.
Oh yeah, so like the previous book was like notably long, and this one was
To
like notably short.
our viewers at home, I'm a fake fan. I listen to the audiobook while I'm doing drawing.
I don't think that's like fake. I think like personally, I like to listen and read at the same time.
Hmm.
It helps
I did.
me think.
The only book I did read was Clark Keish's one because the audiobook wouldn't come out until after these meetings, and I wanted to make sure I had read it.
Yeah, so my preferred way personally to like read is um to have the audiobook and the physical book at the same time, because it helps me stay focused on the book, and it helps me like keep pace with like
Hmm.
so like it's kind of like how like so I guess it would be like my favorite way to read would be like audio and physical, or like audio and an ebook. and then right under that would probably just be physically, and then my least preferred way is the way I read this, which is just audio. Because um it's kind of like how I like to watch movies with subtitles. So like it's I like
Mm.
to like be able to like read the words as someone's saying the words.
Yeah, yeah, having both mediums going at the same time. Yeah, I can understand that. Having that's just, I feel like it also something that does happen to me when I'm either reading or listening to something is my mind will wander and then I'm like, what did you just say? So I think maybe having like the two modes of engagement at the same time would help with that. But
Yeah, it's not always necessary. I think that sometimes certain books it's not as necessary as far as like other ones are.
mm, what was I gonna say? Um, back to the topic of the ooh, back to the topic of the book itself. Um, I'll take over while Alan's having this chat. Um, but yeah, the what was it? The other thing that immediately sort of jumped out because like this is something I've heard discussed on the internet before was like the genre of this book is dark academia, which is like very, very rooted in whiteness, for lack of a better term. Um, dark academia is like historically a very, very like white genre, and I think this story like acknowledged that and sort of like basically used it to like sort of root the story and like the main tensions for the characters. Like
Hmm.
the core conflict of the book is respectability, which is what the original Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde like that the core conflict of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is respectability. In the original story, Dr. Jekyll is experimenting on himself and he's basically invented a serum that makes you into the best, most proper version of yourself.
Right.
Except its side effect seems to be that he ends up suffering from insomnia and he ends up very tired. And it basically turns out that it's the plot of Fight Club. And there's this other person, this mysterious figure named Mr. Hyde, obviously named after Hyde Park, I guess, somewhere in England. We have a Hyde Park in Sydney actually, because Australia was colonized by Britain stands. But yeah, there was what was it? Yes, and then there's like this mysterious Mr. Hyde figure in the story, and they're like, wow, this guy's wandering around being crazy, and then like Dr. Jekyll finds out that he's literally Mr. Hyde through I don't know how I haven't like really analyzed the original story. I just know like the broad strokes. So this was an interesting twist. I remember consuming either it was a movie or a book we'd previously done, I can't remember, where the twist of this book was what I thought the twist of a previous piece of media we were reading was like it would or maybe it was just like a plot idea that I had in my head and then we read
With
in this and I'm like
what the
where it's like
so the
the
last book we read was Tangang All Stars, and then before that it was um I can't
was
remember.
it the one with the letters? I can't remember. The one where the guy's talking to his dad, reading his dad's letters, I think.
That was not the last one we read, but that was a while ago. But
Yeah. I don't remember, but basically just like the plot twist being like the attempted like
oh,
the
the one we read
elements.
before this one was Prey of Gods, I think.
Yeah, maybe it was that. Um
And then before Prey
I
of Gods, it
mm,
was it
I
Vagabond?
can't remember how it applied to Prey of Gods. Maybe it wasn't.
Let me just look back at my
But I think the thing I
Look up
remember
right
thinking
here.
was like the elements that they're trying to purge from the individual are actually like the redeeming elements. Like
Right.
basically his dad, Dr. Jekyll is basically trying to purge. He's trying to purge like all of the like sensitivity out of his kid, basically. It's basically like science fiction conversion therapy on the face of it.
Let's Talk About Love was the one we read before, Chain Gang, and then which was the asexual
Oh yeah, that was the
novel,
month I missed. That's why I don't remember it.
and then
Yeah.
and then before that it was
Here's to praying I don't get the
The Prey
morning
of
shift ever
God,
again.
and then before Prey of God it was and then Kindness of Ghosts, and then
Excuse
before
my horrifically tea-stained cups, by the way. What was I gonna say? Yeah,
Vagabond.
but yeah, like to bring me back to my original thesis statement, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is ultimately a story about respectability. That is the core tension in the story is about respectability. In the original story, he's basically in the original story, it's very uncritical of polite society and is basically
Hmm.
created a serum that gets rid of all of it gets rid of thing in some capacity it gets rid of toxic masculinity. It gets out rid of all of like the roughness of a human person, except the side effect of the potion is that it or serum or whatever they call it is that basically it doesn't actually get rid of them. It turns him into it basically gets all of the elements of your personhood that you're trying to purge and then turns it into another person that also occupies your body. And that's ostensibly what happened in this, except in this case, he's experimenting on his progeny instead of himself.
And then
And this, yeah, the
the
story is
effects
told
are
from the
intentional.
I'm pretty sure the original story is told from the perspective of Dr. Jekyll as
Right.
he's experimenting on himself. So he's like the reason why he doesn't know who Mr. Hyde is because he's never around for anything Hyde does. He just finds out about it like people keep dying and Mr. Hyde is like impossible to catch because he literally ceases to exist for long periods of time. Anyway,
And it seems
hmm?
here that like the the that what do they call him? I think not Gabriel. Um Henry, obviously. But
Mm,
that Henry is aware that Hyde exists.
is is himself basically
Yeah, and that he was doing it intentionally with in tandem with his father who was experimenting on him
in
um
order
in order to cure his
yeah, who is
sexuality.
prioritizing the feelings of his father over his own safety, which is something a lot of kids do, especially queer kids, I think. So it was like, oh, that was something I definitely appreciated about this story was that it didn't have a sad ending. I think the original one might do. I only know, yeah, the broad strokes of like the narrative.
Well, sad ending is a little, I don't know. It definitely I didn't it wasn't sad. It definitely was um interesting. I don't I'm a little on the I don't know how I really feel about the ending. I think that I don't know if I feel like it ended a little too abruptly after like everything came together.
Yeah, well, the shortness of the story was definitely like there was more room for something at the end there. It could
Yeah,
have been longer.
because it focuses so much on the relationship uh between Henry and this character that they invent, Gabriel, who are in this relationship, and because it's told through Gabriel's perspective, who is in love with Henry, who is the person who is getting when you explain the plot out loud, it sounds very convoluted, but it
Yeah, I noticed something about this story was like it definitely leans really hard on characters being annoying and not communicating with each other in order to create tension, I think. That like yeah, maybe that's I don't know if that's necessarily fair. Maybe like the target audience hmm, yeah,
I
it's
don't know.
difficult.
It is a YA book, so the
Yeah,
melodrama is kind of
yeah, because it's like mm,
indicative of the reading level, but
yeah, and it's like, why is Hyde being a pain in the ass and not explaining things to his friend, and also Henry literally
I think
attempts to
in
run
this
it.
case I didn't mind it as much just because
Yeah,
I don't think if I mean it's kind of common for people not to share those kinds of things with their to like try to protect people from that kind of knowledge or like
yeah, it's like very personal, like your medical history and stuff like that.
yeah, I
Like
think
if
that
you,
if if I was to say like where I would get that time that I wanted at the end, I maybe would have I don't know, like because I think maybe in the middle where it was kind of like spinning the wheels with the like the time when like Gabriel and um Henry are like not communicating with each other, I think that I probably would have taken a lot of that out. I don't think that I think that part added to what you were saying, the melodrama, and I don't think it was really necessary for the plot. Like
mm,
I think because it's so short, I probably would have not included that, and then I probably would
mm,
have used that
yeah,
time that was gotten from that to like maybe explore the more of the conflict between like Hyde and Henry because I think that I think that the story is also sort of undercut by the fact that we already know what the twist is. So like it's not really a twist. You know what I mean? Like because I still don't know if like it doesn't like whereas if you sometimes if you know the twist before you go into a movie like this or like Fight Club or like
mm,
Donnie Darko or something, it adds a layer to
yeah,
progression of the story. Like you
like
notice like okay, they're dropping hints about this here, here, and here. And
yeah.
I definitely think there
What was
were
it?
those kind of
There's
times, like
like
when there was like that scene about like the handwriting that I thought was like really good.
yeah, there's like a what was it? Like people like have this criticism of like that Hollywood director J.J. Abrams is like
No,
notorious for
I
like
think you're
leaning
talking.
really hard. Hmm?
I think you're thinking of not the director of Donnie Darko. What's his name?
Oh,
That directed that he
I'm
directed
talking
that
about
Avatar. Directed that Avatar movie.
um no, that's Avatar. That's James Cameron. I'm thinking of
No, not that Avatar.
oh, M.
The
Night
Last Airbender.
Shyamalan.
M Night
Yes, M. Night
Shyamalan.
Shyamalan's big on his twists. But I'm speaking specifically of J.J. Abrams because he's like, especially with like the season of Westworld that he directed that like absolutely caused it to fall right the hell off. It was the issue was it leans really heavily on the twist, and like if you know the twist, you're like, okay, so the entire story just leans really heavily on the stupid withholding of information by characters. And the entire thing becomes really, really flat after watching, and it just like kills any interest in like it just like very bad for retaining engagement. But like you said, like a good narrative will survive being spoiled in a lot of ways, I think.
Yeah, I think
And
I
yeah.
I think also because we're so far removed from the actual meat of the story, like the interesting part of the story
Mm,
is this this situation, this relationship between Dr. Jekyll and his son, but we don't really get
Yeah.
of that. Like we don't
Yeah,
really
it's all
see.
kept a mystery. Like I think, yeah, absolutely. I think I
I
would
think
maybe
maybe it
like
could have
make it
benefited
it could have been
from.
it could have been longer, and Henry could have still had a lot more contact with the POV character. I think instead of like Henry going, I'm not gay, I'm straight now, and then walking away from the protagonist for several for like whole last chapters, and then coming back and going, I'm actually a violent homophobe, I'm gonna run you over with my horse now. Like I think there would have been maybe if like the change was like a little bit more gradual, and we had the story was longer, and you just included the relationship with Henry and Gabriel stayed in the forefront while the experiment was ongoing, while like this character of Hyde was developing in the background.
Yeah,
And
and
like
then
we see his decay. Like we see the decay of Henry instead of him like disappearing for several chapters and then it's all finished. Or it's like,
yeah,
yeah.
and I don't. I also think that there was just a little bit too much going on Gabriel's side that was not related to the essence of like the Jekyll versus Hyde thing. Like I think that the adaptation, I felt like, I don't know, it was just it was a little CW, I guess, for me, where like it was
Definitely.
like there was just too much romance in the plot for like what I was expecting. I was expecting a little bit more like, a little bit more dark academia, like this, like Penny Dreadful. I was expecting a little bit more Penny Dreadful, a little less, uh, uh, you know, uh, melodrama, like CW kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
it was like a hint of Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where I think that it could have really like really leaned into that that even if it did still have like these like deep emotional like scenes, and I think that it could have we could have like maybe added Henry's point of view to not Henry yeah added Henry's point of view to
Mm.
the story. Like that might have been a really good thing. So like,
Yeah,
and
I
like even if
think
like we don't really get the full context of it, they could have like given us like glimpses of it like unexplained, or like
yeah,
you're
and
kind of
that
getting
is something I think
pieces
that's
and pieces.
maybe lost from the original is like the first-hand experience of like undergoing the transformation. Is like
Yeah.
you get the perspective of Henry, and like you get the perspective of the person who's forming this alter ego, and like what the like first-hand psychological experience of that is. And that could have been a good way to also explain why maybe he's not telling Gabriel everything, why the information's being withheld. Maybe he's like literally doesn't know what's happening as a result of the substance
Mhm.
abuse. But yeah, it's just I think that could have been potentially a better, more efficient.
I did enjoy the start of it though. I did enjoy the romance for what it was,
Mm,
like at the beginning, but we just get so
yeah,
very
they did a
middle of it that like, and then there's like
yeah.
like
I
random other
think
people that it tries to include in like the
yeah, and they
plot,
didn't develop them very much. He like sort of comes in and goes,
and
"Hi,
then
Gabriel,"
we're supposed to
and
believe
then and then
they're
I'm gonna
like
have a heart attack now.
yeah, it was super.
As
I just felt like that was kind of
also
super
just
weird.
all of the like medical horror was like I'm just like, oh my god, this is just like work.
It kind of felt
I have
like
to do like palliative care for patients and stuff.
it
But
kind of
yeah.
felt like when you watch a movie and then somebody makes a fan fiction about a character being in love with a character from that movie,
Mm,
and then so like they're kind of like take the essence of like that character and then include it in their story, but it's like the story is really about their like OC, like their original character, and then so like
yeah, it is giving that like
but
it's not
you read it because you want to get fan fiction of that character. So you're not really but you're not really getting the story that you really want. You're getting like this point of view of like this story that the author like wants to tell. So it kind of felt
Mm,
like they really wanted to do this queer story. And it's kind of like I mean, I also kind of that like storyline is like really like done like where like a character like two queer characters fall in love and then like one of them like becomes like straight and then they're like their relationship becomes strained and then by the end they like realize that that they're really all they needed. It's like a really common trope in queer media. So like
mm,
I think that what it really needed was a lot more of that like Penny Dreadful sort of like atmosphere and element to it to like really like
mm,
and also like a lot of these stories are like I don't Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is not a long story. It's actually like short. I think it's actually shorter than because I have it because it's free a lot of places because it's so old. The classic it's like really it's like free in a bunch of places. So I actually have it downloaded somewhere. And the audiobook
mm.
for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and it's actually shorter than the book. It's let's see, I could tell you it
As in the original book is longer.
the original book is short. It's very short. So the original book is
Uh,
so for
yeah, it was.
comparison, it's like half the length of
Is this like one of the those fabled stories
it's
where
less
like
than half the length.
a bunch of like a bunch of English people got together and like wrote spooky short stories together, and like one of them was Dracula and the other one was Frankenstein. Maybe
I don't
not.
I don't
I think
know I don't know what the
Frankenstein was like notable for being like one of the earliest examples of science fiction. So maybe it wasn't alongside that.
I don't know when Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde came out. I know it is like of the genre of like the penny dreadful, which is like this English like tradition of like where they would like print these stories in the newspaper and then like so a lot of them are or like they would people would buy them and at the time so it definitely is from the 1800s. I'm not really sure what part or they have like a lot of them are long because they like printed like the story in sections. So like it's
Hmm.
like Gulliver's Travels or the Count of Monte Cristo, which is French, but it's still kind of it's still printed in like serials, but stories like that. But
Hmm.
I think Moby Dick might also been, but that's American. But these also they're all like written around the same time, like within like 50 years of each other, which is not like super around the same time. But you get the point. But yeah, but specifically like Frankenstein, I think, and uh Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Portrait of Dorian Gray, which is also short. Um and but the Portrait of Dorian Gray is longer actually. So
Hmm.
and then
And the portrait of Dorian Gray is like
Dracula is the same.
inherently queer at the source, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
isn't the
hmm because
Alan's in?
Oscar Wilde was a queer man.
Yeah.
He a
So,
lot of his stories were queer.
hmm, that's interesting. Yeah, and then they like get sanitized because of the Hays Code and stuff.
Yeah, certain versions of it are sanitized. Um
It's funny how like the Hays Code is just like not something anyone knows about, even though it was like half a century ago. This is like there's this whole period in Hollywood where they're just like, you're not allowed to do this. I wonder if it was like public knowledge when it was in effect.
yeah, I think it was that like they
And
were
everyone
well, I
just
feel like I think mostly a lot of people were in favor of it, because it was like of the time
yeah.
more anti they were very
Mm.
anti woke at the time.
Anti what yeah, if we were there was the good old days when before everyone had their agendas and we could
Yeah.
enjoy nice non-political cinema. Um but yeah, what was I that was the other thought was just like yeah, I think Henry was a very passive not Henry.
Gabriel.
Gabriel, although Henry was kind of passive in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think they both were like
Ga-
impressionable youth, as you would
yeah, it
say.
is just like I was gonna say they were both dark academia soft boys, and
Yeah, but I think especially I think at least at the beginning, Henry is a much more vibrant character, and then
mm,
like he
yeah,
kind of like
that
fizzles out.
that was what I was gonna say. Is like I think yeah, the turning point is definitely the turning point where I can see some decent improvements is like when Henry goes, we can't talk to each other anymore, and then vanishes for like several chapters, and then comes back, and it's like I feel like if they kept the ongoing relationship and like or
If we saw Henry
like
change.
if Henry didn't need to disappear, like and like you could rationalize it with like his dad was like doing field testing or whatever on like the changes in his son instead of like sequestering him away while doing the experiment. I think
And
that
also,
could
I feel
be
like Hyde is also not in the story as much as I would have wanted. Like
yeah.
he's a very
I
small
think
character, and
they hide but they hide Hyde and what's his name? They
Henry.
hide both and Henry. I keep like calling Gabriel Henry because I'm like it's the main character and then Hyde titular character and I'm like no that was not it. This is the you didn't read the book. But what was it? I think they hide Hyde and Henry a little bit too much, and it's to the dent. I don't think the mystery is worth more than what you could have like explored with having him have more page time, so to speak.
Yeah,
I think, yeah, the mystery was not worth the payoff of
well,
taking
especially
all of
because
that juice out.
we know what it is at the end, so
Mm,
it takes a little bit of the punch out of it. So I'd be
mm,
interested to think of like if someone just picked this up, like someone who didn't know
yeah.
what
The
it was.
only the only like major change is that Dr. Jekyll is not the person taking the serum in this story. Like the major change is that yeah.
Well, it's also that they changed the character to be black, and the
Yes, that's
story
a
is
major
all about
change. I was gonna say.
this sort of it's sort of like conflict of like black people and British
Yeah, it takes the
during the time period and their conflict within
it
the space they're in.
it takes the original story's rather uncritical understanding of respectability and like in the original story the scary part is like woo science bad and that it doesn't like criticize respectability it just goes what if man was the monster all along and in this one it like has a more like it has a more like introspective understanding of respectability which is like a yeah and it uses the like inherently racialized whiteness of the dark academia genre to like consciously it uses it all like the genre of dark academia and like its historically white nature consciously to like create the tensions in the narrative.
Yeah, it does. I think that that part I thought was really interesting in the beginning. I think it really added, but then we kind of like leave the academic space and we get to like this sort of like professional world, which I think is also interesting.
Mm.
But I thought it,
Yeah, I thought like them at school was a little bit more in like I feel like that setting was a little bit more exciting almost.
yeah, I think because also because they were both interacting in like the same place, and like once they're not in school anymore, there's really like no pretense for them to see each other
Yeah,
regularly.
it's definitely like the turn for the like slightly less engaging when it's definitely when the two characters are split up and like don't see each other for ages. Because like it like their relationship is definitely like the emotional hook of the story, and I think keeping them apart doesn't actually create as much tension as the author might have hoped it would. I think It
Yeah,
would
I
have
think
been
that
better if they had like a slow falling out and were still interacting with each other throughout the book. And it's like, what's going on? And then he's like questioning whether maybe Henry doesn't actually like him. And then he like discovers the actual situation. Oh, I suddenly can't hear you. You are still muted.
oh no, it's my
Oh.
headset gave me like a battery warning, which is what that was.
Uh, uh, I got some headphones because I want to like try and protect my hair from this like strap going across the top, but they broke really quickly. So maybe I need something a little bit more robust because I've had them. They lasted like 1 week. They were like $30, which $30 for like maybe like 1.5 weeks of functionality is kind of shit. But I didn't bother going and
Like
getting another
30
replacement.
Australian dollars?
Yeah, 30 Australian dollars.
I don't know what the
I
comparison
do
is, but
Yeah. Um,
is
back on
is
topic
that
though.
is that like expensive
Yeah, it was like
also?
middle of the road because you can get like turbo expensive ones, but I prefer not to because I don't notice the difference. I was thinking maybe I could get like AirPods and then I can listen to stuff walking around the house.
Mm.
But I don't like battery related stuff. It's irritating.
Oh
Battery
yeah.
management.
Well, the battery management on AirPods is a lot easier because
They're
the
small.
case charges it, and so you don't actually have to plug it in as
Mm,
often because the case is like a battery, so it like charges the headphones and then it
yeah. So maybe it is worth the investment. And then just don't wear them while crossing roads and stuff. That meme of like, oh no, he can't hear us. He has AirPods in.
yeah, but
And
it's not
then,
as bad because you can like put one in so you can still hear,
yeah.
and then it doesn't have the
Mm.
noise canceling, but it
And also
like
yeah,
it's
the
just good for the
cable.
battery because you can like switch, and then so you can wear
Mm.
them longer because you can have one charging while you're wearing one, and then by the time the other one dies, the other one's fully charged. So like it helps with the the consistent use. But back to the I should be trying to get back to
Back
the
to
story, but
back to the story. Yeah, the
I,
characters being what were you
go
gonna
ahead.
say? Did you have an immediate thought? Because my one was
No,
sort of
go
like,
ahead.
oh, that's it, kind of unserious in some capacity. The characters being really passive, like I can understand why he didn't like cast lay on hands on Sir Carew because like Sir Carew had a lot of power in that situation. But like
Cast lay on hand.
after
Imagine playing
he
Baldur's Gate.
yeah he didn't cut what was it the when he was in the like antique, the lady who sells like the crazy antiques, the spooky antiques from the far east, which is like very dark academia, very colonial trope. But
Yeah.
so yeah, that was an interesting artifact to have in this story. But what was it? Yeah, when they were in that shop and then he comes in, and this is like after he's definitely clicked that Dr. Hyde is definitely like chemically like he's either drugging his son or like seriously abusing him in some capacity. It's really obvious Dr. Jekyll is like at the very least like gaslighting and psychologically abusing his kid because of homophobia. And then Dr. Jekyll literally grabs Gabriel and drags him. I'm like, if I was Gabriel in that situation, like I just be like, oh, so we're getting physical. Okay. I hope you can walk without your cane. And then
Ian, would you actually have like, I heard you said this earlier, but like Ian, would you actually have engaged physically?
if he grabbed my chest and I there was someone I cared about and I'd like been separated from them and I was worried about them, and then it was the specific sequence of there's a person I care about, they've been severed from me by this person and I don't really understand what's happening. Then I learn what's happening. It's because this person is like psychologically abusing the person I care about, and then this person also grabs the front of my shirt. I think it's probably fighting time at that stage.
Yeah.
I think that would be grounds for a physical altercation.
I think that I I
I
understood
would,
like the socio-political reasons why maybe he didn't do that. I think that it
yeah.
was I do wish that the dad suffered a few more consequences, except for like aside from like the mom just being like,
Oh
"Now I'm
yeah,
stepping in," and then
the
and you're
mum.
like, and
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
like,
surprised
"Now
the
you're
mum
stepping in.
didn't.
Now you're
I'm
stepping
surprised the
in."
mum didn't like beat the crap out of him, like go and grab like the shoehorn or whatever they have in a Victorian era house and start beating the crap out of him.
But they do that a lot with like in
She
some
had the
stories where
fire
like
poker.
it's
She
like
wasn't.
here's this
She.
character that has been alluded to often, but it's never appeared in the story, and now they're gonna take a big role and they're gonna fix everything. But it's like
Mm,
I don't know why his mom was just like okay with the state of Henry up until that point, but like
yeah, I think we're coming back. We're like coming back to a pattern of like I think maybe Gabriel should have been allowed in the house a little bit more and like
yeah, I think
maybe
that there should have been
I
like
think
a little bit more investigation. If we weren't gonna get anything from
like
from like Henry's point of view, then Gabriel should have
there's
investigated
more
should have been
there
more
was
involved
there
in
was
investigating
room
what was
for
going on.
there was room for the story to be a bit longer, and I think like Gabriel being more involved in the Jekyll family, or like learning more about the family dynamics, maybe, or just literally just being allowed in the house a bit more, I think could have actually benefited that. I think,
I think it would have. I think instead of having this other plot line where he falls in love with this other character, and then like the other character ends up investigating what's going on and then telling him, he should have just.
yeah,
I think it would have been.
that
I think it would have
was
been more impactful for him to have like I don't know, become obsessed with Henry, and then like and like done a bit lot more
maybe
proactive on like
she
figuring
wanted a
out
bit
what's going on.
she wanted like a maybe the author like wanted a bit of a young adult love triangle moment that one of the characters is just very disproportionately underdeveloped and
And also
also
like
dies.
yeah, like it also dies. Yeah, so it's like
Yeah,
I don't think it works out, especially because they spent so much time developing the relationship in the beginning. It just kind of doesn't like
yeah,
work
because
out the
like
same.
I there
And
probably
also the
could
book is
have been
short.
there could have been like another like a rebound boyfriend. I think that could have maybe added some tension to the story because he could have been like, oh man, maybe Henry wasn't the tits and I can
I
move
think
on.
I don't think it would have worked for me because I think that you come into this book wanting the story of like Jekyll and Hyde, so I don't think it would have.
Mm,
I think it would have
yeah,
been.
it
I
would
think
have
it would
been
have
a
been a distract.
distraction.
Yeah, I think it would have been too much of a distraction for me. So I think I would have much preferred if like he could have been a character in the story, but I think that it would have if I would have uh what I would have maybe done is like um I would have had what's his name like Lysander or something like that. I would have had that character
Mm,
be like like a friend of Henry who is like in love with him and like is trying to get him to like live away from Henry. So like the other character is like a friend of Gabriel who's in love with Gabriel, but like is trying to get him to
mm,
live a normal life, but he's just like so obsessed with Henry and like he's constantly chasing after like the story of like what's going on with his
yeah,
friend. And then
it's
so and instead
very much like Bella, and it's very much like Bella with the Cullens after they move away,
yeah, kind of like
and
that.
she's
And then
like,
like
ah,
while
where did you
and then
go?
while he's there like Henry is constantly looking into what's going on with Henry, he just kind of similar to like kind of what happens in the story, he like kind of he's the only person he ever sees is Hyde, right? So maybe we could have something
Mm,
like that to like to balance out like how much we got of Henry in the beginning. We just like only ever see Hyde and he's kind of like trying to figure out like where like who this high person is and like where he like comes from and like I don't know. It's just kind of I think it maybe would have worked
mm,
more if like I think if not just if both Henry and Gabriel was more proactive in the movement of the story. I think that there was just a little bit too much not involved with their relationship and then not involved with the plot that of like the Jekyll and Hyde plot that was going on in the story. Like when you have uh what was I gonna say? Yeah, but it's just like too much other stuff going on, I think, in the story.
Yeah, but and also the story was so short to begin with.
Right.
Like, I think, yeah, I think maybe, yeah, a greater focus. Like maybe he could have like, I think possibly an alternative route was like Gabriel becomes like a family friend to the Jekylls, and like this is, and then like it's only like after after Dr. Jekyll catches wind of his son being an uwu soft boy with Gabriel that
Hmm.
like he's like no, and then casts Gabriel out of the house or whatever. Although that might be a bit too on the nose, like the plot twist that would have like maybe gotten rid of the mystery, like the mystery of the actual remixed element would have been a bit rough there. Um, but yeah,
I
I
don't know.
definitely think I think yeah, it definitely you can feel that the story becomes like the story like struggles to like hold interest after the two lover boys are separated, I think. There's like the
Yeah.
dramatic sort of breakup and then it's like and then I went into full-time labor and it was really boring and horrible and I'm like, don't I know it? But also I think maybe the story could have stayed. I feel like a gradual transformation of Henry could have been a bit more interesting, maybe. Like they're still together and they're still like regularly meeting each other and Henry's like pulling away a little bit and that way it's like it feels less extreme and like the mystery it like keeps the it like justifies the mystery maybe because of the gradual nature of it. Like the protagonist POV character is less inclined to do some hard investigation checks. Um, I think maybe because it's like, oh wow, this guy I really like is like starting to go a bit more distant. That's a shame. And then maybe like the like mysterious twist in the middle is like he like gets some evidence that might cast doubt that there's like a science fiction element to his boyfriend becoming kind of homophobic and instead of like going I'm gonna run away now, I'm gonna hang out with my dad in his garage for ages,
Right.
and then this other character's gonna show up and arbitrarily refuse to explain things, and it's like I think a smoother gradation of Henry's transformation, and then you introduce Hyde later into the story when you're like a few steps into Henry becoming kind of cold and distant. And then I feel like that would justify the main character not asking too many questions to begin with. That I feel like could have benefited from a text script that I could have doctored and delivered that thought better, but you know.
Yeah, I think that overall I really like the story though. I think that it I don't know, I guess really is a little strong, but I like the story. I did. I enjoyed it. It was
I
like I said, it's short, so it's really easy to read and it definitely had a lot of to think about going on in it. So like I was
I
definitely intrigued the whole way through.
I certainly appreciated the tone, especially after the last few books we read. I missed that 1 month, but like the previous books were like my dad's homophobic and then died of whatever it was. Was it
Um
like a it
it
was it
was
cancer?
no, it was yeah, I think it was cancer, but some sort of
Yeah.
cancer, some sort of
Like instead of
Don't Cry for Me, which is about that.
yeah.
And
I
then
it's the the previous titles were like my dad's homophobic and died and I didn't get closure and then me and my GF are in horrific capitalist murder games and kill each other. I appreciated that this one was my BF's dad is homophobic, but we ended up winning. We kicked his ass out of town. And also his mum isn't, at least his mum isn't homophobic. Um, and also I have like a based boarding house person that lets me get free rent on a room. Um,
Right.
I think I definitely appreciated the extremely optimistic tone of the book, or at least optimistic. It was obviously it had like a lot of like reality elements in it, like just the fact that it was like ye olde super duper colonial England and stuff like that. But like the story, they end up winning in the end, or at least like they end up resolving to a point where they can their relationship will carry on after the end of the book, which
Yeah,
isn't
it's
necessarily
this
true
book
of the
is part of a
previous ones.
series of like retellings, like remixes where like they take um
Are they part of like a dark universe, or is
no,
it
no,
just
it's like it's just like them taking none of the other stories are supernatural, I don't think. So it's just like them taking like classics and reimagining them.
hmm,
I think most of them are queer. I'm not sure if all of them are, but a good portion of them are queer. So that's another thing to
are
mention.
they mostly non-white? Or is there what
I'm not sure. I was looking at some of them. I don't know because most of them look like most all the other ones kind of look like they're no. Okay, so there are some.
what's the name of like what's the
Yeah,
overall
I think they all are not white, and I think yes, I think they all are not white, and um, most of them are, and it's like half of them they're like all not white, and then like maybe like half of them are queer. So like um, or maybe more than half. Not sure. They're all YA. Shadows on the way. Amina Mace Coffee. Yeah, so they're like some of them are like older than other ones. They've been coming out for a while. And then like so the one is from Treasure Island remix, a Little Women remix, Robin Hood
wait,
remix.
sorry, what was like the bracket, what's like the overarching bracket of the series again?
Classics, just reimagined classics. Wuthering Heights remix. It's called like remix classics. That's just what the series is called. If you go to the book on Audible, it shows you like it's part of like that series.
I see it. Yeah. Okay, so no, there isn't like an overarching theme of like reimagining historically very like it's not like it's not like a focus on like minority and like marginalized experiences.
No, it is. Yeah,
Although,
they're like that's like
yeah,
they're
I'm
remixing.
I'm seeing the like the list of authors and stuff, and just like the book art. It actually does look like that.
Yeah, it is. They like that's the remixing. So they take the like with this one, they took the Jekyll and Hyde story, and made it black and
Hmm.
queer. So like some of the other ones, they just make them
Okay, so
uh
it looks like there could be
they
like
some of
other
them they
queer
make
ones. It
queer.
looks like.
Yeah, looks like some of them a lot of the other ones are queer
Hmm.
too. Maybe
It's
like like I said, maybe
definitely.
like half.
I'm seeing some book art of some uwu soft boys. Definitely. I'm seeing some like tonal trends between them.
Yeah, this one is like yeah, it's like a Romeo and Juliet retelling where like they're both guys. And then there's a Great Gatsby, it looks like where they like it's more queer than it already was.
Yeah, they've got
Or
a.
maybe they changed
Hmm.
the characters. I don't know, it'd be interesting to see which characters they changed to be slow burn bromance. Ooh, I don't know. I don't know about that. But so anyway, like the idea that they were going with here, which I think they achieved. I think
Hmm.
I think that you know the I think that the I don't know if the author really balanced out the the queerness. like the romance as well with the original like tone of the tone of the original
Mm.
as well as maybe they could have.
Yeah, it may have been a bit of a challenge because, like, yeah, it's probably like, yeah, they might be commissioned to do it.
Yeah, I think that's usually how it works. Like a
Yeah,
company commissions
they've,
the publishing commissions the authors to like do like this project, and then and then they
mm.
release them and that.
So yeah, I definitely understand that, like, maybe writing a book like that, and there's probably like decent time constraint and stuff, and it's like, so elements of the book might not have been able to form as organically as they could have and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I
Because
think also having read some of the author's other work, like I just recently read, like this past week, I read two of her other books, which are a series, um, that are also it's also like a queer fantasy book. So and it's also YA. So I think that I had a higher hope for her, but I think that those are like regular YA fantasy and this having like that horror element, I think maybe is a little was a little bit of a difference here because I did like I like those I think a bit more than I like this because they were a little bit more because they were allowed to be a little bit more fun, which I think that
mm,
this one couldn't kind of really be that, and so it kind of got uh wrapped up in like the melodrama a little more than some
yeah,
would have.
yeah, I feel like there's definitely an audience. I hope this book maybe finds it, but it might be hard if it's different, quite different from the other books in its in its in its
Yeah, I
like
think
little
maybe
series.
because she went so light on the horror, it might work a little bit better in tandem with the other books. Um, and I think it's definitely a good addition to the zeitgeist of literature. I think that it's a good contribution to to have a black queer telling of this story where you
Mm.
know
Well, I think, yeah, it definitely like the introduction of those identities, I think was very organic to
yeah.
the actual framework of the original story. I think it was a very organic and elevating addition. It wasn't like tacked on because yeah, I'm sort of like beating a dead horse here, but like the theme of respectability is extremely applicable to the identities that it's introduced. And
Yeah, and I think it felt really or like you said, I think it felt really organic, and I think it the a lot of the conflicts that were not relating to the Jekyll and Hyde story, I think worked really well in the story. But I think that the part that didn't really work as well for me was the transition towards the end. Like I think that that is kind of like where I think it didn't flow as well as I think
yeah,
I think the beginning flowed really well, and then like you said, up until that point where they both leave college, and I think it kind of falls a little
yeah,
bit.
like
Like
the
it falls a
school
little bit as
setting.
far as how well executed it is. Because it kind of there's like that transition period between like the
Like
the
I
dark
think
academia story and then like where it's kind of like becoming like the Jekyll and Hyde story.
where if I could be like an underqualified piece of shit and like do like a red pen, I think maybe Mr. Carew and Mr. Hastings could have been combined into one character, and the
Hmm.
setting could have stayed in the school instead of like Mr. Hastings going ostensibly selling Gabriel off. Instead of that, it could have been maybe like, I think instead of him selling him off, it could have just been the one character, and it's like, you're gonna get expelled unless you start doing this for me. And then
Yes,
we stay in the school.
I think them. being queer was enough of an exciting incident to
Mm,
propel the plot along. I don't think we really needed the expulsion part
yeah.
to get
It's just
the
like I know, like
to get it moving.
it's like that the meme of like the dog like side eyeing, and it's just like I know what you are, and then we have that, and then we do have like the Mr. Carew thing. Mr. Carew does like it's not explicitly stated in the book, and I suppose maybe that's because of like the targeted age demographic. Like Mr. Carew does like eventually attempt to like essay or at least give like unsolicited touching of the POV character, and I think that's obviously the like secondary almost inciting incident that like leads to his murder.
Right.
Except then, yeah, we get the later twist that like that was it was a setup, and I think all of this whole thing we didn't need the change of setting, and I think the school setting was very. I was like quite engaged while we were still at the school,
Yeah, and then there was
and
like that whole thing with like the basement of the school, and I thought that that's where the experiment thing was gonna happen, and then we kind of just like threw that away all of a sudden,
yeah,
and I was like,
the basement was a brilliant setting, and that could have maybe instead of having it all occurring in his house because he's been expelled and fired, like this that setting change wasn't necessary. We had the spooky school dungeon. It's very Hogwarts. Could have gone had the spooky school dungeon where he's cutting a dude open. That didn't necessarily go anywhere, which was kind of interesting. Like the dissecting thing was just sort of like a bit of spooky set dressing, I guess.
yeah.
And if you're gonna do that, why did you do that and then expel the characters from the school if you were gonna do all of that set dressing? I think
And
also
then
just like
it also doesn't flow into the rest of the story because we get cut off from those characters, and then like
yeah, that's the big
it doesn't
thing.
reset up any of the spookiness in the
We
regular setting until until the end.
yeah, we set the boarding house up, we set the school up, and then we sort of throw them away, and he never actually gets to go inside of the Jekyll residence. He never gets to go in there, so that space isn't really set up, and we just have to take for granted that it sort of exists off to the side and is sort of kept out of it.
And then there's also like this idea that like Hyde is living somewhere else, but like he also
Mm,
like it. I didn't really get that part. Like there was like this idea like Hyde was like a. I guess it like adds to the fact of like why uh Gabriel never knew
yeah,
about him, but like Gabriel has never been to their house, so it doesn't make sense
yeah.
to like
I
have to
think,
set him up somewhere else.
yeah, I think that could have been. It's like, oh, you had a sibling I didn't know about, or something like that. I think
Which is kind of what they tried to do, but like it didn't.
all of this could have been a bit more elegant if Hyde was like, "Who is this new kid at school? The new like sexy guy with like the platinum blonde hair, the platinum blonde like curls and stuff like that. The like kawaii soft boy who like comes in and then like instead of having instead of having terminal heart condition guy as like the tertiary love interest, the like YA trope of your you could have your love triangle cake and eat it too almost by having you have this love triangle situation with Hyde and Henry. Just that's already like pre-installed with your decision to make the love interest the the person undergoing the experiment. It like comes installed. It's like, oh man, damn it, Henry, you were like the one. We were like that, and now you're pulling away from me. And now there's like this sexy new soft boy has like enrolled in the school, and my heart. I think that could have been a little bit more of an elegant solution than having this other character come in and be basically die and then also do all of the investigation off screen on behalf of the main character. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's, I think, yeah, there's definitely a tighter thing. I think a tighter story. the story could simultaneously have been longer and maybe also not have meandered or like not have like done the hard setting change of all the characters getting kicked out of school.
Yeah,
And
I think for sure.
yeah, this is a, these aren't necessarily fair criticisms. We don't know like how quickly this story maybe needed to be composed from its original framework and stuff. I think the only reason why we're able to come up with these criticisms is because the author did actually do a very elegant job of like changing, like introducing
I
all of
think
these new elements.
because the beginning I think was so strong, it set up um a lot of it set my expectation a little higher than maybe it was going in. Once because
Mm.
I went in, I found out that it was a retelling, so I was a little, and then because I read two of her other stories and I really liked those, so I had a little bit
Oh,
of a more.
what other stories is this author
So
done?
the she has a two book series, this this Poison Heart and this Wicked Fate, about like this girl who um has uh this like plant superpower and um
Okay, so it's like giving Poison Ivy a little bit, but
yeah, a little bit Poison Ivy a little bit, but it's like it brings in like different things from
are her
it's more
stories
mystical
are her
than
stories typically queer or
yeah, so that one is also queer. So
hmm. All right. That sounds interesting.
but that one is a sapphic. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Still a still viable candidate for your book club. It fulfills the
well,
criteria
I
of
already
being.
read it, so I don't know if I would put it on. And I usually
That
try to
means you've just done your homework ahead of time, Alan.
I don't know.
Give
Maybe we're
yourself a
supposed to. I
break.
don't know.
Give yourself a
But I don't
break.
need a break. I read a lot of books anyway, so I don't really need to pick books that. And we already read this author, so I probably won't. It'll probably be a while before I, want to come back to her instead of recommending books from new authors that I haven't checked out before. So maybe I'll keep it on the back list as like an idea, but I don't know if I'll um
Hmm.
come back. I actually read it for. I ended up reading it for a different book club, and because I already had actually had one of the books because I thought it was the first book, and then it ended up being the second book in the series. So
Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting mistake to make. Did you like? So how long did you? How did you read into it, or did you just not read
where
it?
did I put that? I don't know where it is, but I have it like the physical copy. So I buy like special editions of books, and so I saw that the second book was available as like a special edition on Fairly, which is the site that makes like special editions of books. And so I saw that
Hmm.
they had it on Fairly, so I bought it when I was buying a bunch of other special editions because like every year around this time of year, they have like a sale where they like sell like they have like a catalog, and then every month they do like a special book. They do like a book box. So I get the book box, and then they also have their like regular editions they do that aren't included in the book box that you can just buy online as
Hmm.
fairyloot.com. I think it's .com. But
So it's sort of a bit like that. Sort of a bit like that loot crate thing, except
yeah, it's like
specifically with literature.
Illumicrate. There's a lot of different ones. There's like Illumicrate, the Broken Binding, and then Fairy Loot. Those are like the three big ones that do special editions of like it's mostly like fantasy is what a lot of them do, like mostly fantasy, and then they do like other like popular books that they would do like special editions of like Prelude has done like
That's very sweet. That's sort of like it's sort of like the other example, other parallel I think is like the Humble Bundle on Steam, where it's like sort of like independent game developers, sort of like all they like package the things together and then it goes and exposes their work to like an audience that like wouldn't necessarily find them otherwise if they weren't seeking them specifically.
yeah, especially
So,
with the boxes, the like the monthly boxes, they always do like a new release. So it's a good way to get new releases of like books of like new
hmm.
uh like fantasy books if you're like really into fantasy and you want to try new fantasy as it comes out. Like they give those, and then like the editions are like really nice. So but I'm gonna go ahead and end the live here, and
We didn't
then
get to talk about the other book, but
well you
yeah,
haven't read it,
sorry,
so
I haven't read
I'll
it. But
if
I just
next month
I just sit here and go, yeah, yeah, okay, oh yeah.
I like what I did one time with those two when we did the two books like 2 months ago when you weren't here. We I ended up
That lighting's much better. I should have had that for the live. Anyway, keep going.
because Sean was here. I did the I because she read the nonfiction books, and so we took up time, so we brought the other book in. So I might do that again next month, or else we'll just talk
Hmm.
about it and then so with the other two books that we read, we'll talk about three books next time, and then that way
Hmm.
I'll have someone to talk about the book with. But anyway,
Yeah.
everyone, to everyone watching, thank you for watching, and see you next time.